What's up, guys? Welcome back to the video. Or why do I keep saying that? I say that out of routine, but welcome back to another video, and welcome back to... Oh, let me say that again. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the video where I cover legs as a part of my training split, and welcome back to the training series of my current training split routine. So like I said, guys, we're on day 3. This is legs. Just to remind you, I lift 3 days weights in the gym per week. Day 1, day 3, and day 5. And then the other days are off days / cardio and abs once a week. So just so you guys know. There's a old leg shot of me. This is back when I shaved my legs. For some reason, I decided that I would look better with shaved legs and shaved arms. This is quite a few years ago, and yeah. So honestly, my legs are so much improved than this guys, in all aspects. Like, who would have thought my calves are actually bigger now too? So I only really show these pictures, even though they're a few years old, because I was super lean relative to like how lean I've ever gotten in these pictures. So I want to show you guys shots where you can actually see the muscle groups. So if you guys aren't following me already, follow my shorts, Eating for Fat Loss, where I'm currently dieting right now, and I'm hoping to do some comparison shots of what I look like now with the muscle that I put on, because I've definitely put on quite a bit of muscle, especially in the legs. Actually, guys, like, I've gained quite a bit of muscle. So really, for these leg routines, what I'm mainly focusing on right now, and like you guys kind of know, I pick general exercises to focus on over time to progressively overload, and I still have room for that spontaneity in there. So for like kind of like the quad, I guess kind of like glute region as well, it's really just some sort of variation of squat, and right now it happens to be the hack squat. It can be also Smith squats. It's always like a supported squat. I don't really free barbell squat anymore, because to control the weight the way that I want to control it and to go close to failure training on my own, it's just not something I consistently can do. By all means, you can definitely do it, but it's just not something that I focus on really. But you guys can throw that in there if you want. I'm also focusing on the stiff-legged deadlift, and that's because it really fires up the hamstrings. Both of these movements, the stiff-legged deadlift and the hack squat, tend to trigger quite a bit of glute stimulation, and it really depends on your genetics. But these two exercises will build overall balance, and anything that I'm lacking, I just kind of throw in extra. And honestly, it really depends on like what you first of all want to look like, because if you are somebody that really wants dominant quads, which obviously you don't want to have like things that are too per se dominant. You can have standout body parts, but you want to be careful not to have things that are like underdeveloped. Like, it's okay to have overdeveloped muscles in a sense, but you should have the antagonistic muscle, the muscle that's doing the opposite motion, at least develop, so you don't get injured. Because if you're too like quad dominant and you don't have enough hamstrings, then you could end up getting an injury. Because too much forward motion power and not enough backwards motion power is a recipe for disaster. So just keep that in mind. But also, like, it depends on your genetics, guys. So you focus on what you want to look like, but also like your genetics will kind of dictate what you need to focus on. Because if you're glute dominant versus quad dominant in squats, then you're gonna obviously need to add one more exercise for, say, like quads if you're glute dominant, because if your glutes are taking over the squat and getting more stimulus from them, then you might need to focus more on doing like leg extensions and like maybe even trying out a different variation of a squat to see if your quads will respond better, or maybe start doing like more leg extensions and stuff like that, leg press and whatever. So it really dictates what you should focus on, and that's really across the board for basically anything, right? Like, what doesn't respond that well genetically, you might end up having to do extra volume for it. So yeah, genetics are always there. It's such a massive thing in any sport, and even more so like bodybuilding, because it's how well you perform, and it's also how well like how you look. It's how well your shape is, and so many other things. So You can either be blessed or cursed. And the thing is, all of us have a strong point and we all have weak points. You can minimize your weak points and build them up and make them better. But even like Chris Bumstead, the glorious C-Bum, he's got very strong points. Like he's got great legs, an amazing set of lats, like a great back, really good shoulders, etc., etc. Good tight waist and everything. But he does have pretty weak biceps. I don't really want to say triceps because his triceps are pretty good, but he's got pretty weak biceps, right? Just because his muscle insertions are pretty short and they don't aesthetically look that good, and they just kind of look flat. But he can make the most of it by making his biceps bigger to at least make them more developed and make them pop a little bit more. And honestly, he has pretty big arms relative to the other guys in his category. And even though they don't genetically have the best shape and the best pop, he can dwarf some guys even though he doesn't have the best shape and end up winning some bicep poses potentially, right? And then his strong points just overwhelm everybody. So genetics are always there. You can't get rid of it. So a common question would probably be like, where should you put your legs in a squat, in like deadlifts, any kind of like, or even like leg extension, where are your legs going, where are your feet going? And the key is really whatever feels comfortable. Now you got to keep in mind, guys, if you're doing stuff that's closer stance, it's going to train the outer part of whatever you're training, and that really applies to hamstrings and quads. And then if you do something with a wider stance, it's going to train the inside. It still trains everything, but it's more of an emphasis on that area. So for me, I just do like a shoulder width, like just wider than shoulder width kind of stance for my squats, or about shoulder width. And then I point my toes outwards so I can allow basically myself to sink down into the squat. So that's what I do. And honestly, the stiff-legged deadlift isn't something I've been doing for very long. I'm actually just slowly taking my time to increase my strength on it. I just recently did 2 plates on this assist kind of squat rack. It's not a Smith machine, but it's not like a free weight squat rack. Eventually I'll kind of move over to the free weights, but it's just, I want to do something that's a little quicker to set up. I'm not too into necessarily having like a strong deadlift. I'm okay with using this kind of assist machine. And also, like, I'm still having a bit of back sciatic kind of pain, so I'm really taking my time with this movement. But I'm very slowly, progressively getting stronger every week. I'm definitely going lighter than I could. I could definitely go a little bit heavier. I'm kind of getting to the top end of where my strength is for the control and for the rep range that I want to do right now. But eventually, like, I still have room to up it a little bit, and I really took my time to get to where I am. And that's just because it's a new movement for me. But I just find it fires up my hamstrings, more so like being super sore like no other. I find like other hamstring movements, you can potentially feel it better during the workout. But if I were to stimulate my hamstrings with like a ton of curls, when my legs get sore, usually not the day after, it's 2 days after for some reason, whereas everything else, it's like right after. And my lats take like typically 2 days to start to feel sore after. But I just find that when I do stiff-legged deadlifts, my hamstrings are the most sore after, even though they don't necessarily get the most pumped per se relative to doing like a ton of curls. So I definitely know that there's a ton of breakdown in the hamstrings from that stiff-legged deadlift. So, and it's just such a good posterior chain movement. It just involves so many muscles in the backside of your body. So it's something that I definitely want to incorporate, because it also, like, I really want to be balanced. And honestly, having a strong lower back, guys, is such an important thing just in life in general. Like, you're going to like help your buddies move, and you're going to pick up a couch, and like you're strong, and people look at you and you're struggling with picking up things, and they're like, oh, what happened to this guy? Like, he's not that strong, but he goes to the gym like every day. And it's like, what? You don't have any carryover because like you don't have good lower back strength. So even though you have strong arms, strong like chest and whatnot, like you're not able to actually perform per se in real life, because the limiting factor is like something like your lower back. So it's important to do these kind of movements. And of course, when you're in the gym, like, these are very fixed movements. It's not like you don't sit in the perfect plane of motion and have the exact perfect technique in real life when you're lifting things. It's kind of more like free reign. Like, you do want to have good form when you're picking things up. For example, like sitting back like you're in a squat or a deadlift, and using your glutes and your legs instead of your back in your lower back, and don't arch your back when you're picking stuff up. So those same kind of things apply, but keep in mind, like, what we do is very fixed plane of motion, and like it does develop strength, but it's not fully like 100% a carryover into real life, but obviously it's better than nothing. So this is typically what I do surrounding the leg workout. I typically pair these other exercises in there. Leg curl prior to my stiff-legged deadlifts, and the leg extensions prior to my squatting. And I will pair those two in my head, kind of. So it's like my hamstring 2 exercises and then my 2 quad exercises. And really the curls and the extensions before those big heavy compound lifts. If you're resting enough after your top set of, say, like leg curls, and you're warming up in between your sets of stiff-legged deadlifts, and you rest enough before you do your top set, I find that my strength is actually not really that far off, because I've done workouts where I do leg curls, then leg extensions, then back to hamstrings and doing the stiff-legged deadlifts. But I find that it just kind of like feels a little bit better when you go straight from a leg curl to a stiff-legged deadlift. And like I said, the strength is not too far off, so you're still pretty much using the max load that you can possibly use. And the muscles just feel better, the joints just feel a lot warmer, and yeah, I just find it's a better way of kind of going about it. So just a quick reminder, guys, I do a low volume, high intensity per body part, like kind of like the Mike Mentzer training style. I typically train to failure or just before for my top sets, and I'm typically aiming for a top set of 8 to 12 reps. Like I said, to failure or just before, and I'll either do a back off set, which is 8 to 12 reps again, to failure or just before, or after my top set, I'll just do a drop set. And the drop set is typically half the amount of reps that I do for my top set, and again, to failure or just before. And that's really just to add a bit of extra volume, because I don't think maybe one top set is fully enough, but I don't necessarily think that I always need to do 2. And I'll be 100% honest with you guys, like typically I'm doing the drop set as opposed to the back off set. With that said, the back off set is basically similar to my drop set, because the back off set you rest more so you can get the same amount of reps as your top set, and it's only a little bit lighter. Whereas for my drop sets, I only actually drop the weight a little bit, and it's almost like a rest pause. I rest for like 10-ish seconds, then I go into the drop set, and the weight's still close to the top set weight, and I'm doing way less reps, but I'm still hitting another set of failure. So it's another stimulating set. It's another set to failure or close to failure, and I just find it adds a little bit of extra stimulus, a little bit of extra volume, just in case one top set's not fully enough to build enough muscle and to stimulate the muscle. And really, honestly, and we'll get into the mastermind plan of this, but huge shout out to Hunter Labrada, the professional bodybuilder that weighs like 3,000 pounds. I basically stumbled upon one of his videos, and I'm literally just copying and pasting his leg routine. And the dude has humongous legs, super developed, one of the most impressive set of legs and complete legs, I would say, in bodybuilding right now. And I just really liked it. I gave it a try, honestly, and this is the beauty of like being open to learning and trying different things, guys. Like I saw his routine, and like he pairs the leg curl and then he goes straight into his stiff-legged deadlifts, and I was kind of like, oh, maybe I'll like rest my hamstrings and do quads first, do quads like after my ham curl. But he was on to something when he was doing the leg curl straight into the stiff-legged deadlift, leg extension straight into his squats. It like pre-warms you up, and like I said, if you rest enough, your strength is fine. And I tried it, and honestly, guys, I love this routine right now. So I've been just hitting replay on this like over and over, just trying to progress my strength on it, and like it's been easy work, honestly. I feel like my legs are getting some good gains from this. So thank you to Hunter. And honestly, legs is not that complicated. Like this routine is pretty simple, as compared to back. Really, back isn't like that complicated if you really like think about it. But let's just say back is more complicated because you got to worry about your vertical pulling, your horizontal pulling for the upper back, pulling for the lower back area, like the lower lat region. And let's face it, push day is probably the easiest to structure and probably the most fun. But honestly, leg day, low key, might be my favorite to work out right now. Okay, and so let's get into this mastermind. So I've pretty much preluded to it like a bunch already, but basically I start off with either hamstrings or quads. It doesn't really matter. It just kind of like what I'm feeling for the day. But typically, I shouldn't say typically, I kind of alternate. But anyway, so let's say if I start with hamstrings first, I'll do the seated leg curl or lane, but typically I've been into the seated lately for a few months now. And the funny thing is I always used to be so into the lying leg curl, and I never thought I'd get into the seated leg curl. But I actually love the seated leg curl probably more than the lying hamstring curl. So if you guys are kind of like on the fence about the seated one, give it like a little bit of like a chance, because like it honestly, like I think it's actually pretty great. And then I go into the stiff-legged deadlift, and then I do leg extensions, go straight into my hack squat, and then I'll do either adductors or the calves, either or. First, I mean, like I'll either do adductors first and then go into my calves or whatever. And sometimes I don't even do the seated calf raise. I'll just do stiff-legged calf raises on the leg press cable machine. And I'll just do extra sets to kind of compensate for the sets that I don't do on the seated calf raise. And sometimes I'll do one-legged stiff-legged calf raises, so I just kind of have fun with that. But this is basically like the way that I think of it in my head. It's like the two hamstring movements are like kind of grouped together. The two quad movements are grouped together. Then I do either adductors first or calves first, in terms of like the last two exercises, the last three exercises. And yeah, that's how I kind of think of it in my head. Other days I'll kind of do things like split squats to build up glute strength, because glute strength is really important because my glutes don't respond as well as my quads and hamstrings. So I like to have other days where I kind of just do a little bit of extra stuff for glutes. Sometimes I might not even feel like doing the stiff-legged deadlift, so I'll do like a hamstring curl, and I'll typically do some sort of like thing for my lower back, because typically the stiff-legged deadlift lights up your lower back, and if I don't get that stimulation, I could skip it for the week or just do some hyper extensions or something like that. And then sometimes I want to do leg press instead of my squats and leg extensions, and yeah, it is what it is. And so there's an example of just like what another day could look like. I could just jump in and be like, hey, I'm feeling some quads today. Let's start with some leg extensions. Let's just bust out a ton of reps, take our time to warm up, do some extra sets, really go to failure, do some drop sets. And I feel like doing leg curls the same way, just a few extra working sets. Let's rip it. And then for some reason I feel like doing some split squats, which is basically torture, but for some reason I feel like pushing myself that day. Let's do that. And then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? Let's do some leg press. I haven't done that in a while. I've just been squatting for the most part, and the squat machines are all taken, let's say, and I just the leg press machine is open. It's just staring at me right there. So I'm like, okay, I'll just hop on that. And maybe because sometimes when you do a lot of leg press, sometimes it activates your lower back a little bit. It shouldn't too much, otherwise you're like doing it kind of wrong. But let's just say like I'm feeling a little broken down this week. Like let's not do the stiff-legged deadlifts, because let's say it's like I've done so many other stuff, like especially split squats fires up your glutes quite a bit, and your hamstrings and your quads. So it's kind of, and I've done the extra working sets with leg curl. So maybe I'm like, you know what, my hamstrings are pretty fried. I don't want to put on like a heavy amount of weight with like a deadlift to fire up my hamstrings, because like they've had enough. And I've done the extra sets with the leg curl, so my hamstrings are done. Let's just do some hyper extensions to get that posterior chain, activation, because that would get a lot of lower back stimulation from the stiff-legged deadlifts. And then maybe I'm tired and it's been like an hour or something like that. I chatted with some friends and I'm like, you know what? That's it for today. And trust me, I ain't skipping those calves. I will do my calves. I really want to bring up my calves, and I really prioritize my calves, I guess I should say. And I really like... It's a lifelong goal to develop an actual respectable set of calves. I have high insertions for my calves, and they're not the greatest looking, but it is my goal to develop a reasonable set of calves to where people can look at them and give me the head nod of respect that, hey, this man has gone through the trenches and built up his calves with some of the worst genetics. Well, actually not really the worst, but not the best genetics. And he made it work. He made it happen. So this man takes his workout seriously. He takes his calf workout seriously. And yeah, so it's a goal of mine. So trust me, I ain't skipping them. And so wrap up for legs here, guys. So basically, And this is just like any of the sessions, really. Like, you can focus on different exercises depending on how your body's developing. So if you notice that like your hamstrings are responding super well, maybe you can do them after your quad stuff, and that way you can prioritize like your quads if they're lagging behind a little bit relative to your hamstrings. Keep in mind you can't PR on everything, and this is like something I realized this recently on my back day, to the point of where I think I'm just gonna do, like, after my bicep curls, like, you guys know I do my pull downs, then my pull ups, then I do my shrugs, and then I do my bicep curls, and then I would go into doing like an upper back row and then a lower lat row. I'm thinking of doing just one for the week, and then the next week doing the one that I didn't do, because it's so hard to PR on everything, guys, and you don't have to, but it's fun to PR and it's fun to progressively overload and lift heavy, but you can't do that on like a ton of exercises. So I may not PR on like I may see if quads feel good that day and just focus on PRing for quads in that workout, and then vice versa for hamstrings. Or if certain movements feel good, then just go with the ones that feel good and try to PR on those ones. And the ones that don't feel as good, just don't push it too much. Like, push yourself to failure, but don't try to feel like you need to like hit a new PR if it doesn't feel good that day, because then that's how you end up getting injured. And that whole blurb at the bottom there, you guys can take a little read on that. But basically what I'm saying is that like everything balances out, because you got to come back to your mastermind plan, and that if you didn't do one of the exercises that you should have done, then you do it the next week, and then maybe you neglect the one that you did the week before, and then that's how things kind of balance themselves out. Honestly, you could literally just come in one day and just squat and just do a few working sets of squats, guys. That hits the hams, glutes, and quads. Not as much hams, so you could just maybe fire off a couple of leg curls at the end or before you squat, because I like doing stuff before I squat to kind of warm up the knees and to make the squats feel better and just safer. But honestly, if you only had time to just come in, rip some hamstring curls, and then just a bunch of squats, and that was it, that is better than sitting at home and not training because you said, I can't come in because I don't have enough time to do the perfect workout. I'm not in the mood to do all these different exercises. Literally, buddy, if you just came in here and did one top set of hamstring curls, one top set of squats, and just took your butt home, maybe even hit calves because you realize you probably should hit calves because you got small calves, then you go home. Guys, over time, like, that kind of mentality is what separates you from the rest of the population, because it's stuff like that adds up over time, and that mentality adds up. And the more that you do this stuff, the better you get at it. So just keep that in mind. Honestly, that's my leg routine, guys. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Stay tuned for the part, 4. It's day 5 of the 3 days on weights, and that'll be push. That's probably the most fun one in a sense. Honestly, right now my leg workouts are probably the most fun. Second push, maybe pull last. Really depends on the day. It kind of fluctuates week to week. But stay tuned for that last video, guys. I really hope this leg routine works for you, and maybe like you learned something from it. Give it a try. Change it up a little bit. Take a little bit from it. Take all of it. Figure out what you want to do with it. Hopefully it helps you guys out. And I will see you guys in the next video.